Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you're all having a good weekend. So today is going to be another installment in my series of how to design things in Fusion 360 and print them on your printer, whatever printer you happen to have. So today is what I was going to do last time, and that is we're going to make a sheath, a belt holder for my Leatherman Juice XE6. This is like your Swiss Army knife. What is the model? Champion that has everything on it. And you can see how thick it is. Thing feels like it weighs a pound and a half. It's a brick in your pocket. So we're going to make a sheath for that with an integral belt clip. And before we begin, I want to talk about a couple things real quickly, and that is first thing is design philosophy. And if you're totally uninterested in design philosophy, you can probably skip the first couple of minutes of this video. But for the rest of it, one of the reasons why I'm getting into this now is because making this sheath has a couple really brings up a couple really interesting things about design philosophy, and I thought I'd touch on them before I began. And to give you an example of what I mean by design philosophy, number one, you're designing something for the person who's going to be using it. If it's going to be you using it and you're like me, you know, function always comes first. Form sometimes doesn't come in at all, but function always comes first. And here's an example. I'm very utilitarian. Here's an example. This is the cup holder that holds the stainless steel cup I got off Thingiverse. And it works really well, except has all these extra design elements in it. These depressions and ribs, and he's done it up and down and around on the handle. When you hold that handle in your hand for very long and squeeze very hard, which I tend to do, it leaves these marks on your hand and it's not comfortable. When I designed mine may not look anywhere near as cool as his with all those ribs and depressions and stuff poking up on it, but you can hold it in your hand without it hurting. That's what I mean by design it for who you're going to make it, who you're making it for. If you're only designing things for yourself, only design things for yourself. But if you're in business and you're trying to sell things, you don't want your customer going, oh, wow, yeah, that'll work. Thanks, bud. Writing you a check and leaving. You want him going, holy shit, dude, that is super cool. You want him smiling, grinning, and bouncing on his toes as he's writing the check and then leaving your shop because you know he's coming back. And you know he'll tell everybody else about you. So that's that. Also, and there's an exception to this, and that exception is when the function is form, like the giant Hulk statue. Its only function is to sit there and look cool. We don't care about how it works because its function is to look cool. So there's that. I know somebody involved in firearms design, and he used to tell me that there's only two kinds of guns designed. One designed to show to your friends and one designed to show to your enemies. One you care what it looks like, the other doesn't. So keep in mind who you're designing it for. The next thing is don't design something that you can't make with your current set of tools. Years ago when I worked in shops, fabrication shops, we would have all types of equipment, including machine equipment, everything. And we'd get new engineers in now and again, and they would design something, and the blueprint would come down to the shop foreman, who would take a look at it. His face would turn beet red. He'd do a Picard face palm, and he'd march upstairs. When I ran shops, I did a little bit differently. I'd go up, I'd still do the Picard face palm, but I'd go upstairs and get the engineer, probably fresh out of college, not his fault, bring him into the shop, show him all our equipment, how they worked, then showed him what he designed and explained to him why it couldn't be done. That way you're not making an enemy out of him, and hopefully you'll turn him into a good designer. And if he doesn't, there's always time to make an enemy out of him later. That's easy to do. It always isn't quite so not easy to do. So 3D printers have some interesting things. We can make things that you can't do in traditional machining. We can print a hinge fully assembled. We can't machine or fabricate one that way. We would have to fabricate it in three pieces, the two sides and the pin. But 3D printing also has some limitations. And mainly those limitations, at least for me at this point, are support. I don't like a lot of support. Overhangs not being printable being a big one, and build plate adhesion. If you were going to design the Seattle Space Needle, you wouldn't print it from the top on the bottom because there would be no way to hold it onto the build plate without a raft and a huge amount of support. So we have to take that into design. So with things being said, let's pop over to Fusion and let's start this thing. And I have, as always, done a quick little drawing with some measurements on it, just so I don't have to keep measuring it over and over. And let's touch on another one of my pet peeves, and that's one of these things. Have you ever had anybody show you a picture of something they wanted designed and said, "Can you do that?" And you say, "Sure, send me measurements." And they measure it like with their wife's tape, that she uses to measure for dressmaking, and it's about an inch and a half. Well, about an inch and a half doesn't work. So I have some very good ones of these. This one's from Harbor Freight. It's like 20 bucks. With a 20% off coupon, it's 18 bucks. They even make a cheaper all plastic one for 10. Send them to your friends if you have to, but good God, you got to have measurements when you are trying to design something. So let's pop over to Fusion and let's get this started. And again, I am going to try and keep this down to 10 to 15 minutes. I've already blown 6 of them. So let's pop over to Fusion and let's get this going. So first things first, I'm going to go to my upper right hand corner. I'm going to right click. I'm going to check to make sure I'm on perspective with ortho faces. Now I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to create a sketch on the bottom plane because I want to design from my build plate upwards. And let's start with a rectangle. So sketch a rectangle, a center rectangle, click in the center, drag out, and my first dimension is ready for me, and I know that dimension is, I know I'm 23 by 25, plus I need wall thickness. So 23, 24, 25, 23 and 4 is 27. Good grief. 27. Hit tab, and my other dimension is 25 and 4 is 29. And there we go. Let's zoom in a little bit on it. Now that Leatherman has a curved profile. I could make this straight walled, but I'd like to incorporate that curve into it a little bit. First, it'll help it not rattle so much. Secondly, I think it'll look better. If you're designing it for yourself, you're probably thinking, "Oh, why do I care?" And that might be perfectly fine. But let's say somebody with a local hardware store or a local chain of, say, 10 hardware stores comes up to you and says, "Hey, bud, how about you make 10 of those for each of my stores? I'll give you $8 a piece for them, and I'll sell them for 12 bucks a piece, make them in different colors." I would take that deal all day long. This thing, when it's done, will probably print in 2 hours. I'd sell them for $8 all day. 800 bucks? Damn right. I'd be printing them night and day. So you want to make it look good. So as long as that change for appearance doesn't hurt or even helps our overall product, it's good. So I'm going to hit E to extrude. I'm going to click on this. The height of my Leatherman is 82. So I'm going to bring this up half the distance. So I'm going to type 41. I'm going to hit enter. Let's zoom in a little bit. And oops, you know what? I forgot something. Let's go back to that. I want to change that extrusion. So I'm going to come down here onto that extrusion on my history. Every step along the way in Fusion is saved down here in your history. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say edit feature. And I want a taper angle up on this, and I'm going to give it 2. Let's take a look at that from the side. I'm just eyeballing this. I have not figured out what the taper angle should actually be. I'm sorry, Dad. My dad was a mathematician, by the way. I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm not sure I possess the math to figure that out. So I like that. 2-degree taper angle halfway up. We'll see how that works. Another beauty of 3D printing is fast prototyping. If it's wrong, I'll just come back and switch it and make another one. So let's shell this. So let's click on Modify and Shell. Let's start at our top. We know we want 2mm walls. Hit Enter. And there is the bottom part of our sheath. Now, as much as I would love to taper this up, we're not going to get our Leatherman in there. So the rest of the way up has to be straight. So let's click let's click E for extrude. Let's click on this and let's come up the other 41 millimeters. 41, enter. And there is our basic shape that our Leatherman tool is going to slip into. This tool also has that corkscrew on it. So we got to kind of take into mind that corkscrew when we measure it. Otherwise it won't go in or it won't come out. So here we have our basic shape. Now we have to think about our belt clip. And we also have to think about how we're going to print this. In order to avoid massive amount of supports, it has to be face down or else the entire inside is going to have to be filled with supports. Unless you have found a way to get all that support out of there easily, I have tried it. It sucks. I have tried all kinds of different settings and it sucks. Plus it's going to leave a nasty surface on the inside you're going to have to finish. And the same with the belt clip. I think we're going to wind up having to have some support, but if you're making 100 for these for the guy down at the local hardware store to put on display and sell with his Leatherman, he thinks he can make himself an extra $5 per sale. You don't want to spend an hour on each one of these post-processing. That would really suck. You want these to come off the printer and you want to do a very minimal amount of work on them to have them look good and be ready to sell. So that pretty much rules out lots of support because support sucks. If you found a better way where support doesn't suck, please let me know because I think support sucks. So with that being said and resaid and said again and reset again, let's move on. Let's create ourselves a belt clip. A couple of ways we can do this too, and I've thought about this and I've fiddly farted around with a couple of different ways, but let's try a way that I think is going to be simple and is going to work. So I am going to create it on this face and I am going to create a sketch. I'm going to create it on this face. And you know what? I don't even need to do that. Let's stop that sketch. I don't need to do that. And I think I'll come down here and delete that sketch so it doesn't confuse me later on. Let's just hit E to extrude and let's extrude this face out. And let's extrude it out 5 millimeters. And let's say, okay, here's the basis for our belt clip. So now let's make that sketch. And now let's make it on this face. And now let's sketch a a 2-point rectangle. And let's do it, I don't know, I don't want it locked to anything right now except the very bottom. So let's come down there until it locks into the bottom. Let's click it. Now let's dimension it. I'm going to hit escape to get rid of my rectangle tool. Let's hit D for dimension. Let's click this line and then this line. And we're going to make it now I accidentally locked that in. So let's do Control Z. Let's get out of there. Let's zoom in a little this time. And let's go back up to sketch. I need one where I have 3 sides that aren't locked in so I can dimension them. So we're going to say 2-point rectangle. And I'm going to stay away from my lines. And I'm just going to make it here. And I'm going to come down and lock into the bottom because I want it there. And did it lock that one in again on me? Why is it locking that one in on me? It did. I'm not sure why it's doing that. It's locking that in. Let's undo it again and say Control Z, and let's undo it again, and let's try one more time. Let's click front over here in the right just to make sure that I am squared away. Sketch a rectangle, a 2-point rectangle, and I don't want that line locked up. See, it wants to lock in there. So there we go. Now I got it. Hit escape. So now the only one locked in is my bottom at this back surface, which is going to be open. So let's hit D for dimension. Let's click that line. Let's click that line. Let's make it 2 millimeters. And let's click this line. And then let's click there. And let's make it 2 millimeters. Oops. 2 millimeters. And there we go. So now I am going to hit escape to get rid of my dimension tool. I'm going to hit E to extrude. I'm going to click that. I'm going to come this way. I am going to tell it I want to extrude that instead of a distance amount. I'm going to say to object, and that may become apparent why later, and it may not, but I fear that I'm going to make some changes and I want that extrusion to remain constant. So I'm going to click to object, and I'm going to click this far face and say OK. Okay, now no matter how wide I make this, this extrusion is going to go all the way through, or narrow how narrow I make it. So we have been running 15 minutes. Good grief, I talk too much. So here is our basic design. We have our belt clip. We are going to embellish the belt clip. We're going to add some features to it. We are going to add some fillets and some other things, but that's going to be it for today. Please come back to see part 2, where I will talk less and design more. And I hope you all have a great day. If you like this video, or if I've helped you out, please like and subscribe. Please consider using my affiliate links below. And by the way, that 2-color Geeetech printer is still on sale for $249. It's an Ender 3 clone, and I am just having to hide my wallet from myself to avoid buying that. It's in my links down below, as well as a Creality printer meant for children. So take a look at them, and I hope you have a next day, and check back in with me later. Bye for now.